topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, Pennsylvania. Welcome to another Ask the Experts. I'm still trying to get used to saying Pennsylvania. We have been a Philadelphia show for the last 10 years. So that's a lot of introducing the show as Philadelphia, but we became the state of Pennsylvania. We got your letters, your emails asking us to do a wider geographical range, which we've done. And then starting next month, we go on TikTok as long as the government is going to let us. It's a huge audience, so we'll be able to benefit others. You know, we do a lot of shows. We do not only Pennsylvania, but we do shows all over the country. And there's a few shows that I just really enjoy doing. I enjoy it the way it's a very important subject. If you're a worker and you get injured, and we are so blessed to have one of the finest attorneys in the state of Pennsylvania. He only handles workers' comp law, which in my eyes makes him even stronger. Let me welcome you to Attorney Michael Cordamone.
Good morning, Steve. How are you today?
You know what? I can never do my monologue with you long enough. I love doing your show. I think what you do, Michael, is so important because a lot of people do not realize what their benefits are by having an attorney that handles workers' comp law. So we just feel so blessed to have your firm as our expert.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoy doing the show and helping people to get answers to their questions and giving them some peace of mind about what can be a really scary part of their lives after an injury.
Michael, there's just so much that people don't know about when they get injured. And what I say is, I think that when they retain you as their attorney, now they're making the playing field level because these insurance companies do not like paying out.
No, they do not. That's their goal in every case. I represented them for almost 2 years in my early career to get a feel for what's involved and how they behave and how they talk about their cases and how they analyze them. And the goal in every single case for an insurance company is to pay out as little as possible. And you juxtapose that with the injured worker, somebody who's hurt and needs good care and needs money to survive while they're out of work. It's a really scary proposition. And people who go at it alone, you know, there's some people that make out okay, but a lot of them don't. And we're here to level the playing field. There's no fee in terms of an out-of-pocket expense. We get a percentage of the wage loss benefits that we recover. And so somebody can hire us without having to send us any money, no cash, no check, nothing, and get their case positioned in the proper way. So, you know, we love what we do, and we're small and focused, and each day we try to level that playing field with, you know, a couple more people.
Michael, there's so many new people that are finding our show. Tell people about what your firm does.
Sure. So, yeah, we're exclusively workers' comp firm, making us really pretty rare in Pennsylvania. 100% of our practice is representing injured workers. And we're sort of a well-oiled machine with our exclusive practice. So we have offices in Lansdale and Philadelphia and up in the Lehigh Valley and Bluebell. So we're nice and spread out here in the east part of the state, although we handle cases all over Pennsylvania. I would say the majority are from probably Lancaster and eastward, but a lot of our proceedings are now by video. Ever since the pandemic, the workers' comp courts have kept most of our stuff by video, so we're able to represent somebody even in Erie or anywhere else. It's the same law. Sometimes the hearings are live. It depends on the situation and the judge, but for the most part, it's by video, and it really allows us to sort of broaden our reach, so to speak. So, but yeah, we're very accessible. We're small. We have 2 attorneys, a really good staff with a Spanish translator, and we're very focused on making the experience as stressless as possible. The workers' comp system is very stressful for injured workers. They have to go to exams a lot. Some of them are being spied on. They get treated almost like a criminal by a lot of the adjusters. And so our job really is to not just legally help our clients and make the right moves in a legal sense, but also give them the hope and the fortitude to persevere through what can be a really long time in court, or a long time until a recovery. And sometimes they don't recover depending on the injury. So I look at our job as twofold: the legal aspect and sort of a psychological aspect to really keep our clients from losing it on a mental or emotional level, because it can be very trying.
Like, one of the things I love about your firm is you've seen it all. So when a new client comes to you, you can actually, because of your experience, you can actually let them know what's in store for them. And it's not a guessing game for you.
I agree, Steve. It's a really nice, comforting feeling for both myself and our clients, where there's really nothing we haven't seen in my 25 years of doing this and counting. So I'm able to tell the injured worker exactly what's going to happen, what paperwork they're going to get in the mail, how long the case is going to take, what to expect from the independent medical examination, how to change their social media settings for privacy purposes, to be on the lookout for certain things, and in what instances they need to contact us because they got certain papers in the mail. So it is nice when we have that kind of experience. We're able to really, in a confident way, tell our clients, here's exactly how the whole thing is going to work out. And most of the time we're right, because it's all we do. I mean, it's, you know how these things play out. Once in a while, you might, get a decision that you thought you were going to win and you lose, or vice versa. But for the most part, I'd say 90% of the time, you sort of can predict the outcome with real confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Long ago, a lot of different areas of law worked on their compensation like you do now. And a lot of attorneys stopped doing that because nothing's 100%, but you still work on they do not compensate you until you've actually done all the work.
Yeah, it's not a billable, hour dynamic on our side of the table. For the insurance company attorneys, those representing the insurance carrier and the employer, generally speaking, that's a billable hour type thing. Not on our side. We have to advance the cause of our client to get paid, either getting them benefits they're not already getting, or preventing the insurance company from reducing their benefits, or settling a case. So that is the nice thing. It puts a lot of pressure on us, but I like that pressure. I think it brings the best out of the attorneys. And I think on our side, and I'm not disparaging the defense lawyers, they do a great job. They have a job to do. We need checks and balances. I understand that. But I think I find the most passionate attorneys are the ones on the injured worker side, because there's so much at stake for these families. And the insurance companies sort of, maybe they're their bank account goes down a little bit if they lose. And so it's a different feeling when you're representing an individual who's really suffering versus sort of a corporate entity. So I think, on our side of the fence, we seem to have a little bit more passion overall.
And customer service is very important to you.
It is. And something I get better at each year. You learn how to handle the personalities and how to comfort them and what to say and when to say it. These aren't things you learn in law school. You learn, just like in most professions, you learn probably 95% of what you need to know on the job. You still have the fundamentals that you learn in law school and what is a contract and what is this and what is that. But in terms of handling people, you learn that on the fly. And our firm really puts a lot of emphasis on comfort. How can we make this person feel comfortable with us, with the system, and with the likely outcome? And that's really something we really focus in on.
Michael, what type benefits are there under the Pennsylvania Workers' Compensation Act?
So the two main benefits, Steve, are wage loss and medical benefits. Wage loss for your, obviously, if you're using wages because of the injury, most people fall into what's called a 2/3 category, meaning they get 2/3 of their average weekly wage. Some people fall at a higher level at 90% if they're a low wage earner. And then there's a max rate each year. But so wage loss benefits is the big one. Medical benefits, of course, for reasonable, necessary, and related treatment. And then there's also specific loss benefits for amputations or disfigurement of the head, face, or neck. And also, of course, death benefits. So overall, there's basically 4 categories. You have the wage loss, medical, specific loss, and then death benefits.
What about when you're injured? How do you apply or go after the benefits?
That's a great question. There's no real application per se. What happens is the injured worker has a responsibility under the Pennsylvania Workers' Comp Act to give notice. That is either verbally or in a written form, telling their boss or the owner, supervisor that I got hurt at work. Here's what I hurt, when I hurt it, and the nature of my injury. Once notice is given, then the employer has 21 days and their insurance carrier to investigate it and either accept the claim, deny it, or temporarily accept it. A temporary acceptance means they can revoke it within a 90-day period. So some employers will have you write out like an incident report. That's a case-by-case thing. But in general, the idea is you give notice to your boss. They should then report it to the workers' comp carrier. They then sort of take over and investigate, and they really have 3 weeks to make up their minds. It doesn't always happen that quickly, which can trigger a penalty petition on our behalf, but that's how it should work. So it's not really an application in terms of a written form. It's giving notice, and you have 120 days to do that, or else you have no case, no matter how severe your injury is. So notice is really important in workers' comp. And it's also disputed a lot. Some people, I may have talked about this on a previous show, they might tell their boss, my back's hurting today. And maybe they're going in and out of work because of a low back problem. And the employer will sometimes testify in court, hey, John Doe never said he hurt his back at work. He just told us his back was hurting. So notice is really important to be clear about it and to explain to the supervisor, the manager, that you hurt yourself from the work activities, assuming that's the truth, of course. So that's really the first step, and then the burden sort of shifts over to the insurance company.
It's so important that you're right. Timing is really important. Do you ever see where someone is injured at work, but they go on working and they think they're okay, and then a week later, the problem is really aggravated and it gets worse, but it took a week for the injury to really show up? Does that ever happen?
Steve, that happens more often than I could ever tell you. It's, in fact, the most common scenario we see where somebody gets hurt. They do not want to cause, contrary to maybe the insurance company's cynical beliefs, they do not want to cause waves, especially if they just started there. They
Right.
think it's going to go away. It's just a little sprain that's going to get better after a few days. And they don't want to, report it because they want to try to work through it and keep working to their credit. And then they realize the pain's not getting better, and maybe continuing to work is actually aggravating it. Then they have pain down their hip or, behind their leg, and then it gets scary and they need an MRI, and maybe there's a herniation there. So the employers will really use that situation against the injured worker. Well, you signed a document when you started working here saying if you got hurt, you would report it right away. Meanwhile, the injured worker's trying not to make a big deal over it, trying to tough it out. They report it a week later, 2 weeks later, and then it's used against them. So that's very, very common because most people don't want to get wrapped up into the workers' comp system. A lot of people know from experience or talking to a coworker that it's a nasty, contentious system. So they try to work through it, and that's really common.
It must be really scary when you go to court. Is it done by a jury or does a judge hear it?
We have workers' comp judges, so there's no jury. Obviously, who you get assigned to matters. There's some judges who are a little bit more, claimant or injured worker friendly than others. So once a petition is filed, it generates a notice of assignment, and that tells us who the judge is. And then after that, you get the notice of hearing. So, but the hearings, again, most of them are done by video now. Sometimes they're live in person, but we don't have a jury for workers' comp here in Pennsylvania.
We just got a text from a listener, Weldon. Great show. He wants to know, how do they determine an old injury versus a new injury?
So the key there is going to be medical evidence, and the law is clear in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of bad information that circulates about this. If you had a pre-existing injury from high school, let's say you played football and you hurt your low back and it bothered you for a couple of years, you got treatment and eventually you recovered, and then you go to work somewhere in a factory a few years later and you hurt your low back again. If your doctor says it's either a brand new injury and or an aggravation of a prior condition, you're still covered. It's still a work injury. Now, workers' comp might fight it and get your prior records and try to blame it on the old injury. But if you have an aggravation of an old injury or a pre-existing condition, that is still a viable work injury. So a lot of times we'll get denials in our cases saying it's pre-existing condition, and the adjusters sometimes don't understand that it doesn't matter if somebody hurt their back 5 years ago, 5 months ago. If this injury at work made it worse and or caused even a new injury, then it's going to be a viable claim. So a lot of people believe that, oh my God, I hurt my back a long time ago. Now I hurt it at work, so I can't pursue that. That's just not true.
Wow. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
See, these are all reasons why people need to have a firm representing them like yourself. And you know what, Mike, some of the letters that come in tell us that they're afraid to, file a case against their company, and they're worried about losing their job. We get a lot of those kind of letters.
Yeah. Another really common fear is, well, I'm not going to pursue this. I'll tough it out, even though my back's hurting. Maybe it'll just go away at some point because I don't want a target on my back. I don't want to get fired. I like my job. Very common fear. And that's why a lot of claims aren't filed because people think that they can be retaliated against, and they can't. By law, there can be no retaliation by the employer. But these things aren't always black and white. Sometimes people, the employers put a little bit more pressure on them, and they're starting to get written up for things after the injury versus before the injury. And so they're never going to overtly admit, hey, we're targeting you. We're annoyed that you got hurt and you're pursuing comp and you're in and out of work. But sometimes you can tell from the circumstances and the change in the circumstances that, you know what, there's actually a viable case here for employment discrimination because they're getting demoted or suspended and these kind of things versus before the injury when they had a nice clean record. So sometimes we have to refer out our case to an employment discrimination attorney to take a look at that idea. But a lot of people think that that's what's going to happen. Does it happen? It's a case-by-case thing. Most employers are sophisticated enough to not make it obvious, but there's also that gray area where you do see, in a lot of cases, a little bit of a shift in the attitude towards your client from the employer. So it's something that we're very sensitive to.
Who decides what doctor you're going to see? Is it the company? Do you assist with that?
In the beginning of a case, most employers, if they have a list of panel doctors, the injured worker will see the panel doctors for the first 90 days. And there's some real technical requirements. For example, and when the injured worker gives notice of their injury, they're supposed to be reminded that there's a panel and given the list that they can choose, things like this. And it doesn't always happen, but if the rules are followed properly and there's a list of panel doctors, the injured worker in Pennsylvania sees them for 90 days. And then after the 90 days, they can see anybody they want, which is huge because in other states, I think New Jersey, for example, you don't really have control over your doctor. That's a huge issue because a lot of the doctors are biased or cynical. So you want somebody who's not afraid to advocate for the injured worker, to listen to them. So that control issue is very important. The panel doctors tend to minimize the injuries and characterize them as strains and sprains or contusions. And they try to hold off on spending the money for the MRI. Maybe physical therapy will help this person first. So if you can circumvent that and get around the panel doctors in that first 90 days, you're in really good shape. Otherwise, you sort of have to wait it out, and then you can go to a doctor. And yeah, we help out. When an injured worker's after that 90 days is up, when they need help, we're absolutely able and willing to say, hey, we think this guy has a good reputation or this doctor. And if they're already treating with someone that they like and they're comfortable with, I don't like to rock the boat. But if they don't know where to turn to, then we'll give them a couple ideas. It depends on where they live, and then they can make the choice.
Michael, it's, as always, your show goes by so fast. I had so many more questions. Let's give everybody, especially the ones that are listening on radio or the podcast, just give them your phone number and your website address.
Sure, and I agree. It's always the blink of an eye. It feels like we could talk forever about the topics, and and I enjoy it.
I want people to know, Michael, also that if they have a friend or a family member that is going through this right now, that to give them your phone number and to write the number down, because you never know tomorrow what's going to happen.
No, you never know. And people, even just briefly, even office workers, sometimes they trip over a computer cord and they end up having back surgery because these people are really not thinking about work injuries, let alone the construction worker or the person who's doing physical labor. So you really never know. So our phone number, so everybody has it, is 215-206-9068. It's 215-206-9068. We're at Cardamone Law, CARDAMONELAW.com online. And, if you want to email, you can always email me directly. It's michael@cardamonelaw.com.
Michael, we cannot thank you enough. Michael will be back again with us next month with more Ask the Experts. Be safe, Michael.
Thanks, Steve. See you then.
For sure. That's Michael Cardamone, attorney Michael Cardamone. He is one of the finest workers' comp attorneys in the state of Pennsylvania. I promise you, if you have a work-related injury, you are in such good hands. Hey, that's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.